As cameras simultaneously become smaller and more powerful, Panasonic sets a new high standard with the LX100. It offers physical manual controls, an electronic viewfinder, all the features you'd expect, and a few more, including 4K video. There's a lot to cover. I made a too long didn't watch version, or you can skip ahead to the video section. A lot of power and control has been stuffed into this relatively diminutive exterior, enough to make even an advanced enthusiast happy. It's slim and small, but not enough to pocket. It packs a 12 megapixel micro 4/3 size sensor, crop factor of 2, that's big for a compact. The non-articulated LCD has 921,000 pixels, the electronic viewfinder 2.7 million dots, average. The viewfinder has a diopter, and this switch changes between LCD, viewfinder, and eye detect modes. Handier than most. I've no complaints about the viewfinder, but it's not the best I've seen. The viewfinder's field of view is smaller than the image, slightly disconcerting if you're going for exact framing. The integrated Leica lens provides the equivalent of 24 to 75 millimeters, opening from f1.7 at 24, ramping to 2.8 at 75, closing to f16. Closest focus is 3 centimeters in macro, 43 millimeter filter diameter. This sensor-lens combination yields exceptional low-light performance and impressive shallow depth of field. The lens extends when powered on. The zoom lever around the shutter button extends it further. Except for shutter and manual modes, the lens ring also zooms. Extending and retracting the lens makes startup and shutdown slightly slow. The LX100 has a robust and substantial feel, weighing nearly 400 grams with battery and memory card. Small protrusions on the front and back give it some grip. I switched to a wrist strap to provide slip protection. Classic adjustment dials. Shutter with the dial on top in 1 EV adjustments. Iris by 1/3 EV steps with a ring on the lens, with a nice grip bump so you don't accidentally adjust the focus ring instead. The control dial adjusts shutter speed by 1/3 EV steps, 2 up and 2 down from the current shutter dial setting. With both shutter and aperture on A, you're shooting in program mode, P in the upper left. Adjust the shutter for shutter priority, the aperture for aperture priority. Setting dials appear on screen so you can see the interplay. Shutter speed increases as you open the iris. Before I start describing the LX100's exhausting settings and options, let me just say that mastering all of this camera's deep and wide feature set requires serious study and practice. Alright, 3 usual metering modes, multi, center, and spot. Multi didn't expose the front mannequin the way I wanted, center did. There's an EV adjustment dial and a hot shoe for the non-tilting included flash, guide 10 at 200 ISO. The flash doesn't pull back to bounce, but does take the best integrated flash pictures I've seen. In P, A, or S, the EV dial setting is displayed at the bottom of the screen. 3 EV adjustment either way. In manual mode, if you change both the aperture and shutter from A, with auto ISO you can see it change as you adjust. The red on the dials provides an indication for the usable range. Set the ISO and the EV display becomes the meter. It's kind of small. And note that the histogram turns from yellow to white when suitable exposure is achieved. That's good feedback. In manual exposure, constant preview shows the approximate exposure for the image. Assign one of the function buttons to preview, and then when you press the display switches to preview either shutter or aperture. Display modes include info. Press the Q button to make these settings active. This mode pairs nicely with the viewfinder. The mechanical shutter, which is very quiet, goes to 1/4000th. The electronic goes to 1/16,000th. With the dial set to 1/4000th, use the control dial to access higher speeds. There's a shutter sound selector and volume adjustment. The disadvantage of an electronic shutter is distortion on fast-moving objects. I'd love to have a lock on the EV dial, as I frequently accidentally adjusted it, only noticing several images later. Not much of a problem if it's a fraction of a step, but when it's 2 steps... Press the top of the control dial to set ISO 200 to 25.6. Auto ISO is set by brightness. Intelligent ISO judges both brightness and movement. I did see some grain at 3200, but blur doesn't appear until 6400. You can set an upper limit for auto ISO. The ISO setting appears when you soft press. A menu option provides 1/3 or full stop EV ISO adjustments. There's also an extended ISO on-off setting which provides access to 100 ISO. Maybe I'm being old school, but I'd prefer a dial for ISO rather than EV, just saying. Do like the auto ISO though. In any mode, this dedicated button behind the shutter turns on full auto with scene detect, auto ISO, and white balance. In this mode, only a simplified menu is available. Again, IA displayed in the top left. There are 9 possible modes. I saw portrait, macro, food, landscape, and night scenery. There are auto and manual HDR modes, which can be set to combine 3 images with 1, 2, or 3 steps EV. I'd love to have 6. We're not done with exposure settings yet. There's a highlight shadow curve adjustment tool with a real-time preview. And while I was struggling with all these controls, I did manage to get some great photos. Color rendition is excellent, detail is sharp, and a good contrast range. 3 buttons can be customized, but not filter, IA, or the movie button. I'm pretty sure enthusiasts would be more enthusiastic about the ability to customize over dedicated access to those specific functions. For the 3 customizable FN buttons, 38 different options are available. One of the aspects of Panasonic 4/3 cameras I've appreciated ever since I reviewed the GF1 is low light white balance. Superb for food pictures in dark places with weird lighting. That's true here as well. But I did find I had to keep my eye on white balance. For this rich wood-toned wall, auto just didn't do it. A very blue cast even when I tried with the vivid photo style setting or the expressive and impressive filters. Setting white balance to sunlight got the warm tones I expected. In addition to the white balance presets, 4 custom settings can be saved, unexpected, and a custom color adjustment panel for each. Turn the control wheel to set white balance brackets. A single shutter press saves all 3. However, while this is on, no other drive modes are available. An excellent quick menu on a dedicated button. Fully customizable. You can have up to 15 of 29 shooting adjustments. To customize, first select Q Menu Custom, and then use the Q Options icon to add or delete options. For the Custom Q menu, all options appear across the bottom, and you can arrange them in your preferred sequence, which makes it more organized, intuitive, and useful. If you're shooting movies, I find easy access to Zebra on-off to be useful. One drawback, the Q menu doesn't offer all of the functionality. For example, enable HDR through the menu and you can set the range. No access to the setting function if you use Q. The main menu is easy on the eyes. I like the font and the overall design, which takes good advantage of the screen resolution. When a selection is highlighted, a tip appears at the top of the screen. The main menu needs a second level of navigation. Getting to a setting like Format on the 5th page of the Setup menu, at least 22 clicks raises my frustration level. Some settings are hidden. I couldn't find shutter sounds until I realized it was a sub-menu of Beep. And the menu's customization section has 9 pages. Figuring out what's where is a lifetime learning thing. I found the categorization confusing. Setup and custom setup. Another frustration, dimmed options can't be highlighted, so there's no way to tell either what they are or what you need to do to get access. For example, here's the drive menu, with 2 dimmed out options. Some intuition, but mostly trial and error to find out that aspect bracket and panorama aren't available in RAW. Or with HDR on. Really? Or in Intelligent Auto, you can't use filters, which make pressing the filter button a frustrating exercise until you understand that exclusion. Why no error message? Or more importantly, why are these mutually exclusive? On the side of the lens, there's a manual macro autofocus selector. I find the switch for macro focus to be a little awkward as I sometimes forget to return it to its normal setting. I learned to keep a lookout for the AF flower icon. Focus is quick, but I've seen faster. Turn on IAF to focus as soon as your eye hits the viewfinder, but note that it's a one-time thing. If you change your view, focus doesn't follow. So turn on Quick AF to continually focus on whatever the camera is pointed at. Use the menu to change between the 3 autofocus modes: single, flexible, continuous. In flexible and continuous, focus holds on a subject even if it moves once you half-press the shutter. The manual suggests flexible for unpredictable movement, but I didn't find a situation where I saw the difference. Use AF plus MF to fine-tune focus while half-pressing the shutter. For focus area, press the left side of the control wheel. The LX100 provides the largest selection of options I've seen. Face Eye Detect, which is so often not a focus area option, puts a box around the face and then crosshairs over the eye. Nice! You can also save and name faces, which is saved as metadata for easy playback. See that later. Tracking, pick the point and focus adjusts, albeit somewhat slowly as it moves. Focus point can be moved and sized. 49 area with Select, which shows what's being focused. In Custom Multi, press up to select the pattern and then down to define it. Wow! I'm not sure I can find a use for these clever custom settings. Very cool, although not easy to set in a hurry. One area can be sized and positioned, as can Pinpoint. When you use Pinpoint, a full screen or picture-in-picture display shows the focus point in detail. You can set the enlargement zoom using the control wheel. The Q menu's focus selection item doesn't provide access to the options, making it somewhat deficient. But you can also customize the control wheel to jump directly to select size and position, which could be handy. That's it for autofocus. Did I really get through that without using the word plethora? In manual focus, use the second ring on the lens to adjust. A distance guide appears on screen in an enlarged area. Lots of options here, 3 to select when the enlarge area is activated. Again, it can be movable, picture-in-picture, or full screen and zoomed using the control dial. Peaking shows the edges of objects in focus, 2 levels and 3 color choices. You can disengage focus from the shutter and set the AF/AE lock button to focus instead. And you can select focus or release priority, which doesn't wait for focus confirmation to snap. Display options include a level, yes, and a movable histogram. There's an aspect ratio switch on the lens, a feature whose rationale I don't fully appreciate. 4 aspect ratios, 3:2 the standard film aspect, 16:9 to fit HD TVs, 1:1 for square images, and 4:3. These settings apply to RAW as well as JPEG. Now, unless there's some digital trickery, it seems to me as if the sensor would be 4480 pixels wide and 3088 tall, so I'm disappointed there's no setting to provide a full sensor readout, or the ability to say full sensor to RAW and aspect to JPEG. There's a generous selection of drive modes, most of which have additional settings that appear when you press up on the control dial. 4 burst speeds top out at 40 images per second. The highest speed is achieved with electronic shutter without RAW and stops completely after 60 images. Maximum for RAW is 9 per second, about 24 before it slows down to 2 per. Max JPEG 12 per second, about 90 before it slows to an erratic 3 to 5 per second. I tested in manual with a U3 card. 9 exposure brackets ranging from 3 shots with 1/3 EV to 7 shots with a full stop. Aspect burst, which captures all 4 ratios with a single snap. Self-timer with a triple snap. And panorama. Smaller than typical size with 3:2 aspect, 7968 by 1920 pixels horizontal, 7576 by 2560 for vertical or portrait orientation. In the menu, you'll also find time-lapse, stop-motion, and multi-exposure. Time-lapse takes up to 10,000 minus 1 images at intervals from 1 second to 100 minutes minus a second. At 1 shot per second, that's nearly 3 hours to record, nearly 5 minutes to play back. Remember to use manual focus, exposure, and white balance to prevent weird shifts. When done, select the recording quality, the frame rate, and normal or reverse. It says 15 minutes to produce this 40-second movie. It actually took about 5. Will the battery last for 10,000 shots at 1 per second? Yes. And they'll fit on a 64 gigabit card. But remember, you'll also want enough space to save the movie when you're done. Allow about 5 gigs per 1,000 images and about 400 megs for each 10 seconds of finished 4K movie. Time-lapse here is substantially more capable and powerful than the competition. I was slightly frustrated by the non-articulating LCD, which makes it hard to get down to duck level. There are 6 photo styles, as well as a custom setting with a bunch of options. The 22 filter effects include some of the usual suspects and a few different selections. 3 ways to find the effect you want, normal, guide, and thumbnail, all have a parameter you can adjust, making this mode more powerful than most. In rough monochrome, the amount of grain. For selective color, press function 1 to set the color. Press right to adjust the amount. Sunshine allows you to position, size, and color the sunburst. And this seems an opportune moment to mention that the design of the lens leaves it somewhat susceptible to flare. And the lens ring is flush with the bottom of the camera, so it's a snug fit on my tripod quick release plate. Where other cameras save effects or resolutions other than full sensor readout only to JPEG files, the LX100 will save everything to the RAW files. For the effect modes, there's a menu option to save both normal and affected images, so 2 JPEG images are saved from a single click. That's useful. And in RAW plus JPEG, 4 images. Loving it. Oh, the screen's refresh rate slows dramatically in effect mode. Video. Thanks for being patient if you're here for 4K. This video is not in 4K, but I have posted a 4K sample reel. But wait, I hear you ask, what's 4K? Why do I want it? The resolution of HD video, 1920 by 1080, is the photo equivalent of 2 megapixels. 4K, 3840 by 2160, is equivalent to 8 megapixels, so much more resolution, detail, and nuance. Like this scene, although you'll have to check the demo reel to really see the difference. But here's the thing. Yes, you can downres 4K to HD, but if you're producing in HD, you can zoom up to 2 times, pan and tilt around in post without compromising resolution. You'll need a fast card, described by Panasonic as UHS-1 Speed Class 3. On the card you should see a U with a 3 in it. A 64 gigabit card will hold 80 minutes of MP4 4K format video. You can also record HD and AVC HD, in which case the same card will hold 300 minutes. 4K frame rates 30 and 24, 60 is available in HD, both in MP4 and AVC HD. Resolutions from 4K down to VGA, versatile. Mini HDMI output, which includes 4K resolution, but only for playback, so no external monitor or recorder support. For review purposes, I really miss this capability. Set the picture mode option on the Q menu to switch to video aspect ratio, framing your shot before you start shooting. The record button needs a firm press to start and stop. No accidental recording here, but the button can be disabled. The electronic viewfinder is also available while recording video. Recording uses the current settings, so full manual exposure and focus control is available. This is handheld using the zoom ring. It's a little erratic as I'm constantly having to reposition my fingers and the amount of turn keeps changing. I tried them all, but didn't find an autofocus mode that kept up with the cyclists. Center spot worked best, but if I didn't keep the lead cyclist exactly in center, it wandered. The lack of an audio in connector and live HDMI output means it's not a serious video production tool, but that doesn't prevent it from being an excellent video camera, recording high-quality images in 4K and HD with good quality ambient audio recordings in stereo. There's a 4-step level adjust and on-screen meter display. There are 2 zebra patterns to judge video exposure. My preference here is to set one at 70 to judge white skin, the other 100% for overexposure, but you can only display one or the other. Let me see if I can make sense of the options for taking stills with video. You can take 2 megapixel stills while shooting video, but not while shooting 4K. Change to video photo priority mode to shoot 8 megapixel images. For the duration of the still, audio is muted and the still is recorded in the video. Nice quality image, but that's not working for me. Or, stills can be saved from a recorded video, even in 4K. In playback, navigate to the frame you want. But here's the thing! Smooth cinematic motion requires a shutter speed of about 1/60th, which is too slow for stills. So those earlier captures, I cheated with a shutter speed of 1/1000th. Sure, you can shoot video at 1/1000th, but only if you're going for a camcorder look. And if you look carefully, you'll see the distortion created by the electronic shutter. Now, if that was a little oblique, my recommendation is to always shoot video at 1/160th, even if it requires an ND filter, Video and stills are not compatible in my opinion. And if you're really shooting video just to get a 30 frame per second burst that lasts up to 15 minutes, Panasonic includes the 4K photo video mode. Although this mode dims out a lot of functions, you can select the aspect ratio. The manual recommends a shutter speed of at least 1/1000th in this mode. That's enough to freeze these cyclists. While recording, press the Function 2 button to make markers for where you want to extract stills, up to 40 markers per recording. Remember that this is a photo mode, it's not really designed for video playback. Many effects are available in video. Playback of movies recorded in miniature mode are silent and automatically speeded up 8 times. I hope that's what you wanted. These should be optional settings. An arbitrary time limit of 30 minutes minus 1 second is observed for video recordings, 15 minutes minus 1 second for 4K. I didn't experience any overheating. 4K files are recorded in chunks of about 6 minutes each. There's no interruption between files. AVC HD files are imported into Final Cut with a timestamp offset of about 5 hours. A pretty standard collection of playback options, slideshow. You can view images by the intelligent auto-categorization. Remember the named faces? They're a category too. Burst Play flips through all the images taken in a burst photo set. There's a full-featured Convert to JPEG for raw images. The conversion includes some processing to fix exposure, white balance, add a photo style, or adjust saturation, sharpness, shadow, highlight, contrast. Isn't this the nicest selector? Why doesn't it appear elsewhere? And crop. Using Wi-Fi, you can connect to the Panasonic Image smartphone app that acts as a remote control, or to transfer photos to the phone. If you are planning to upload photos to a phone, shoot in JPEG or RAW Plus modes, or use the Playback mode's RAW to JPEG conversion tool first. You can set up the connection using an on-screen QR code read by the app, NFC, or manually. You can use either the camera's ad hoc network or connect both smartphone and camera to the same Wi-Fi network. Lots of useful flexibility, well implemented. The app provides a full-function remote control, useful if you're perched on the back of a sofa for a group shot, and you can capture the phone's GPS to add location data to your shots. There's not much that's missing. It would be nice if Auto ISO had options to set minimum shutter speed and threshold. Surprisingly, there's no ND filter, so useful for video. A touchscreen, especially for focus, would be useful, and an articulated LCD. Oh, and live output on the HDMI. The LX100 has a steep learning curve, with a sometimes less than intuitive interface. The astounding number of functions is challenging. Several times I could remember that the camera did something, but couldn't for the life of me figure out how to get to it. Through the review, my affection for the LX100 grew. Although it's not the smallest camera in this class, it does have an unrivaled collection of features and functions. Recommendation without hesitation. But if you've watched the whole video, you've already figured that out.